The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Federation was filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. They sat in circular rows that rose up like an amphitheater, their bodies in every shape imaginable. Some had scales, some had fur, some were covered in crystalline formations that caught the light. The air smelled strange, a mixture of different atmospheres filtered and blended to keep everyone alive. Ambassador Vorath stood at the center podium. He was Krithak, tall and thin with forearms and skin that looked like polished metal. His voice echoed through the chamber as he spoke about Tartarus Prime, the planet that appeared on the holographic display above his head. It spun slowly, red and black continents wrapped in purple oceans. Massive storms covered half the surface. This planet is classified as Class 15, Vorath said, the highest danger rating we have ever recorded. The gravity is nearly twice our standard. The atmospheric pressure would crush most of our ships. Temperatures swing from 150 degrees in the day to 80 below zero at night. The creatures that live there are unlike anything we have seen. They are built to survive in conditions that would kill us in minutes. The hologram zoomed in to show scan results. Massive beasts with 6 legs and armored hides. Plants with thorns as long as spears. Volcanoes that spewed toxic gas. Lightning storms that could vaporize metal. The chamber fell silent as they watched. We have already lost 3 probes and 2 mining machines, Vorath continued. The planet contains rare minerals that could power our civilization for centuries. But we cannot reach them. Tartarus Prime is a death sentence. We must accept that some treasures are beyond our grasp. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Species from across the galaxy nodded their heads, or whatever parts of their bodies served that function. It made sense. Why risk lives for resources they could not safely extract? Better to leave the planet alone. Then a human stood up. Commander Jake Morrison was not impressive by alien standards. He was average height, with brown hair starting to gray at the temples. His face had lines from years of smiling and frowning. He wore a simple uniform marked with the symbols of the Terran Exploration Corps. Nothing about him suggested he was special. Ambassador Vorath, Jake said, his voice calm and steady. With respect, I would like to propose that humanity attempts this mission. The chamber erupted. Beings from 100 worlds began talking at once. Some laughed. Some looked confused. The Krithak ambassador stared at Jake with what might have been concern or amusement. Commander Morrison, Vorath said slowly, your species only joined the Federation 30 years ago. You have seen the data. This is not a mission. This is suicide, Jake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something others did not. Ambassador, I have read the reports. I have studied every detail about Tartarus Prime, and I believe humans can succeed where others cannot. Why? Vorath asked. Because, Jake said, Tartarus Prime reminds me of home. That statement caused even more confusion. The other species began pulling up data about Earth. What they saw made no sense. Earth was classified as Class 8, dangerous but manageable. Yet as they looked deeper, they saw the truth. Earthquakes that destroyed cities. Volcanoes that covered continents in ash. Storms that flooded entire regions. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Earth was not a safe planet. It was a training ground. The Federation Council debated for hours. Finally, they agreed. Humanity could attempt the mission. If the humans wanted to throw their lives away, it was their choice. The Federation would observe and learn from their failure. 3 weeks later, Jake stood in the cargo bay of the exploration vessel Frontier. His crew gathered around him. These were not soldiers, though they could fight. They were not scientists, though they could think. They were survivors, each one chosen because they understood what it meant to face impossible odds. Dr. Lisa Chen checked her equipment. She was the science officer, a woman who had grown up in the Australian outback where temperatures could hit 50 degrees, and everything that moved could kill you. She understood hostile environments. Marcus Webb tested the ship's systems. He was the engineer, a big man with scarred hands from years working on deep-sea oil rigs. He knew what it meant to work in crushing pressure and total darkness. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan cleaned her weapons. She was security chief, a former Marine who had served in the Arctic Circle where frostbite could take your fingers in minutes and polar bears hunted humans. She knew about predators. Dr. Nathan Cross organized his medical supplies. He was the doctor, a calm man who had worked in disaster zones across Earth. He had treated injuries from earthquakes, floods, and hurricanes. He knew how to keep people alive when everything went wrong. Samantha Rivers sat in the pilot's chair running pre-flight checks. She was young but talented, a woman who had raced jets through Earth's deepest canyons for fun. She knew how to fly when one mistake meant death. Also aboard was Zixton, a Silurian observer sent by the Federation. The alien had 6 eyes and skin that looked like pink crystal. Zixton's job was to document the mission and report back on human methods. The Silurian expected to be writing a tragedy. During the journey to Tartarus Prime, Zixton watched the humans with growing confusion. They did not rest. They trained constantly. Jake made them run in the ship's gym with the gravity turned up to 1.5 times normal. They spent hours in environmental chambers, exposing themselves to extreme heat and cold. They practiced combat against holographic monsters. "Why do you torture yourselves?" Zixton asked Lisa one day. Lisa was running on a treadmill, sweat pouring down her face. "We're not torturing ourselves," she said between breaths. "We're preparing, but you are causing yourselves pain." "Yes," Lisa agreed, "because Tartarus Prime will cause us pain. We need our bodies to remember that pain is temporary, that we can push through it." Zixton did not understand. The Silurian species evolved on a world where life was gentle. They used technology to avoid discomfort. The idea of deliberately experiencing pain to prepare for more pain seemed insane. But as the days passed, Zixton began to see patterns. The humans helped each other. When Marcus struggled with the increased gravity, Kate ran beside him, encouraging him. When Nathan's hands cramped from the cold chamber, Samantha showed him exercises to keep the blood flowing. They were building something stronger than individual strength. They were building trust. One evening, Zixton asked Jake about Earth. "Your planet is dangerous," the Silurian said. "Why did your species not evolve to be stronger? To have armor or weapons?" Jake laughed. "We did evolve weapons. The best weapons in the galaxy." He tapped the side of his head. "Brains that can plan and adapt, bodies that can heal and change, and most importantly, the stubborn refusal to give up. Earth threw everything at us. Ice ages, predators, diseases, natural disasters. Most species went extinct. But humans survived because we learned one simple truth." "What truth?" "That survival is not about avoiding danger. It's about adapting to it." Finally, the frontier arrived at Tartarus Prime. The planet filled the view screen, beautiful and terrible. The storms were even larger than the probes had shown. The surface glowed in places where volcanoes erupted. The atmosphere was thick with clouds that flickered with constant lightning. Federation High Command sent an urgent message. The readings were worse than expected. The mission should be aborted immediately. But Jake read the message, looked at his crew, and asked a simple question. "Anyone want to turn back?" Lisa grinned. Marcus cracked his knuckles. Kate checked her gun. Nathan prepared his emergency supplies. Samantha's hands moved to the controls. "Let's do this," Samantha said. The landing craft detached from the frontier and began its descent. The ship shook as it hit the atmosphere. The hull temperature climbed to dangerous levels. Alarms screamed, but Samantha's hands were steady. She had flown through worse on Earth. They dropped through clouds that sparked with electricity. The craft was struck by lightning twice, but the shields held. They fell through winds that tried to tear them apart, but Samantha adjusted, compensated, and kept them on course. Finally, they broke through the lower atmosphere. Below them stretched a landscape of red stone and black sand. Massive rock formations jutted up like teeth. A canyon system cut through the terrain, offering some shelter from the wind. Samantha guided them down, and the landing gear touched the surface of Tartarus Prime with a solid thunk. For a moment, nobody moved. They had done it. They had landed on a Class 15 Deathworld. They were the first beings in galactic history to set foot here. Jake stood up and headed for the airlock. "All right," he said. "Let's see what this planet has to offer." The crew put on their environmental suits. The suits were built to handle extreme conditions, reinforced against pressure and temperature. They checked each other's seals, making sure everyone was secure. The outer door opened and heat rushed in like a physical blow. Even through the suits, they could feel it. The gravity pulled at them, making every step harder. The air pressure pushed against their bodies. But they had trained for this. They had prepared. Jake took the first step onto Tartarus Prime. The ground crunched under his boots. He looked around at the alien landscape, at the red sky filled with angry clouds, at the mountains that glowed with volcanic heat. The first day on Tartarus Prime was brutal. The temperature climbed to 120 degrees Celsius by mid-morning, and it was still rising. The gravity made every movement feel like they were carrying extra weight on their backs. The atmospheric pressure squeezed their suits, creating a constant sensation of being compressed. But the crew worked without complaint. Marcus Webb directed the setup of the base camp, connecting prefabricated modules that would serve as their home. The habitat units were designed for extreme environments with thick walls and powerful cooling systems. Each module locked into place with heavy magnetic seals. Lisa Chen immediately began scanning the environment. Her instruments picked up life signs everywhere. Plants grew from cracks in the rocks, their leaves thick and waxy to hold moisture. Small creatures skittered away from the crew, moving fast despite the heavy gravity. Everything here was adapted to survive. "These readings don't make sense," Lisa said over the comm. "Some of these organisms should collapse under their own weight in this gravity. But they've evolved unique skeletal structures, and the plants are photosynthesizing using wavelengths that are almost invisible to human eyes." Jake helped Marcus anchor the habitat to the bedrock. They used drilling equipment that screamed as it cut through stone. "Life finds a way," Jake said. "That's the rule everywhere, even here." By sunset, which came quickly on this planet, they had a functioning base. The modules were connected, the power systems were running, and the air recyclers were humming. Inside, they could remove their helmets and breathe normally. The temperature was a comfortable 22 degrees. It felt like paradise after the heat outside. Nathan prepared their first meal using stored rations. It was not fancy, but it was hot and filling. The crew ate together, talking about the day's work, planning for tomorrow. Zixthon, monitoring from orbit, noted this behavior. Most species would be exhausted after such effort. The humans seemed energized. "They're celebrating," Zixthon reported to Federation Command. They consider this first day a success. The second day brought new challenges. Kate was on perimeter watch when her motion sensors picked up something large approaching. She immediately alerted the team. Everyone grabbed their weapons and moved to defensive positions. The creature that emerged from the canyon was massive. It stood 12 meters long with 6 thick legs that ended in claws like shovels. Its body was covered in scales that shimmered with a metallic sheen. The head was mostly mouth, filled with teeth that looked like they were made of crystal. The creature's eyes glowed red in the morning light. "Ravager," Lisa breathed, checking her scanner. "It's a perfect predator for this environment. The scales are heat-resistant. The multiple legs distribute its weight. Those teeth are designed to shear through rock to get to minerals." The Ravager noticed the humans. Its head swiveled toward them, and it made a sound like grinding stone. Then it charged. Kate opened fire with her plasma rifle. The shots hit the creature's hide but barely left marks. The Ravager was built to survive volcanic heat. Human weapons were annoying at best. "Scatter," Jake shouted. The crew split apart, making themselves harder targets. The Ravager went for the largest group, its massive body moving with terrifying speed. Marcus threw a grenade, but the creature's hide absorbed the blast. Samantha tried to distract it, firing her sidearm, but it ignored her. The Ravager was focused on destroying their base camp, seeing it as an intrusion in its territory. Jake made a split-second decision. "Marcus, coolant system." Marcus understood immediately. He ran to the base camp and activated the emergency protocol. The habitat's cooling system used liquid nitrogen to keep the internal temperature stable. Marcus reversed the flow, flooding the ground around the perimeter with super-cold liquid. The Ravager stepped into the nitrogen cloud, and its entire body seized. The creature was adapted for extreme heat. It had never encountered extreme cold. Its scales cracked. Its movements became sluggish. It roared in pain and confusion, then retreated back into the canyon, limping. The crew stood there, breathing hard. Their first real fight on Tartarus Prime, and they had won. Not through superior weapons, but through understanding. The planet's creatures were specialized for their environment. That meant they also had weaknesses. Lisa was smiling despite the danger. "Did you see its reaction time? Its biology is optimized for heat but vulnerable to cold. We can use that." "We're going to need more coolant," Marcus said, already calculating what they would need. The days that followed established a routine. The crew worked during the cooler morning hours, conducting surveys and collecting samples. They rested during the hottest part of the day when even their suits struggled. They worked again in the evening when temperatures dropped. Nathan made a discovery that would change everything. He was analyzing the atmospheric composition when he noticed something strange. The toxins that made the air unbreathable were actually similar to compounds found in Earth's industrial pollution. In small controlled doses, the human body could potentially adapt. It's risky, Nathan explained to the team, but I think we can gradually reduce our suit dependency. We expose ourselves to small amounts of the atmosphere, let our bodies build tolerance, and slowly increase the exposure. You want to poison us? Samantha asked. I want to adapt us, Nathan corrected. It's the same principle as vaccines. Small exposure creates immunity. The crew debated but ultimately agreed. They trusted Nathan's expertise. More importantly, they understood the value of adaptation. Anything that reduced their dependence on equipment was good. On day 10, the planet escalated the challenge. Lisa's weather instruments detected a massive storm system approaching. It was like nothing in Federation records. Wind speeds exceeded 500 kilometers per hour. Lightning strikes were constant. The atmospheric pressure inside the storm was crushing. We need to evacuate, Zixthan's voice crackled over the comm from orbit. Federation protocol requires immediate extraction when facing weather events of this magnitude. Jake looked at his crew. They were standing in the base camp, watching the storm approach on the horizon. It looked like the end of the world, a wall of darkness shot through with lightning. The landing craft isn't rated for those conditions, Samantha said. We'd be torn apart trying to reach orbit. So we stay, Jake said simply. Marcus was already planning. We anchor the base directly into bedrock. Use explosive pythons, the kind designed for deep ocean rigs. Then we route the lightning through a grounding system. That's insane, Zixthan protested. It's engineering, Marcus replied. The crew worked frantically. They drilled deep holes into the bedrock and placed explosive charges that would drive metal pitons deep into the stone. They welded together metal rods to create a lightning rod network. They reinforced every seal and joint on the habitat modules. The storm hit 3 hours later. The wind arrived first, slamming into the base camp with the force of a hammer. The habitat groaned and shuddered. Outside, anything not tied down was torn away and flung into the distance. Then came the lightning. Bolts thick as trees struck the ground, each one carrying enough power to vaporize metal. But Marcus's grounding system worked. The lightning hit the rods and was channeled down into the planet's crust, the energy dissipating harmlessly into the rock. Inside the habitat, the crew rode out the storm. The modules rattled and shook. The lights flickered. The air cyclers strained. But the anchors held. The seals held. The humans held. The storm lasted 18 hours. When it finally passed, the crew emerged to survey the damage. The landscape had changed. Rock formations had been eroded. Sand had been blasted into new patterns. But their base camp stood, battered but intact. Zixthan's voice came over the comm, filled with something that might have been awe. You survived. The Federation engineers said it was impossible, but you survived. Jake looked at his crew. They were exhausted, but they were smiling. Impossible is just another word for difficult, he said. As the days turned into weeks, the crew began to truly understand Tartarus Prime. The planet was not trying to kill them. It was simply existing in its natural state. The heat, the pressure, the storms, the predators. These were normal conditions here. The key was adaptation. Lisa studied the native life and learned from it. The plants had waxy coatings to prevent water loss. The animals had specialized organs to process the toxic atmosphere. Everything here had found a way to survive. Humans could do the same. Nathan's gradual exposure therapy was working. The crew could now spend short periods outside their suits without suffering. Their bodies were adapting just like the native life. Marcus improved their equipment, learning from failures and successes. He built better anchors, stronger seals, more efficient cooling systems. Each problem had a solution if you were willing to work for it. Kate established a defensive perimeter using lessons learned from the Ravager attack. She set up sensors, placed deterrents, and created safe zones. The local predators learned that the human base was not worth attacking. One evening, the crew sat together in the habitat, eating dinner and talking. They had been on Tartarus Prime for a month. They were still alive. More than that, they were thriving. You know what's funny? Samantha said. This planet reminds me of home. The others laughed, but they understood. Not because Tartarus Prime was... The Galactic Federation could not stop talking about Tartarus Prime. What began as a mission expected to fail had become the most watched event in recent galactic history. Zixton's daily reports were studied by scientists, military leaders, and politicians across hundreds of worlds. In the Grand Chamber, ambassadors gathered to watch live feeds from the planet's surface. They saw humans working in conditions that should be lethal. They watched the crew moving across scorching landscapes, climbing through toxic canyons, setting up equipment in the middle of storms. It did not make sense. Ambassador Vorath stood before the assembly and admitted what many were thinking. "We were wrong about the humans," the Krethak said. "We assumed they were reckless. We thought their confidence was foolishness. But they are succeeding where we predicted failure. We must reconsider our understanding of what is possible." The Krethak Collective, a species known for careful planning and strategic thinking, began reviewing all their data on humanity. They discovered something disturbing. Humans had passed their military assessments not through technology or numbers, but through an ability to function under stress that would break other soldiers. Human Marines could fight effectively after days without sleep. Human pilots could fly with injuries that would incapacitate other species. The Valoran Empire, aquatic beings who lived in peaceful ocean worlds, had avoided contact with Earth because their surveys showed dangerous tectonic activity. Now they understood. The instability that made Earth frightening was exactly what trained humans to handle Tartarus Prime. A new group formed within the Federation, calling themselves the Human Capability Study Group. Scientists from dozens of species wanted to understand what made humans different. They studied human biology, human history, human culture. The answer they found was both simple and profound. Humans evolved on a planet that was constantly trying to kill them, not through active malice but through natural chaos. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, earthquakes that destroyed entire regions, storms that flooded continents. Earth was a training ground for survival. Most Federation species evolved on stable worlds where intelligence developed to avoid danger, but humans had no choice. Danger was everywhere. So they evolved something different. They learned to face danger and adapt to it. Their bodies could heal from terrible injuries. Their minds could function under extreme stress. Their spirits refused to accept defeat. On Tartarus Prime, the crew reached a new milestone. 6 weeks into the mission, Lisa made a discovery that changed everything. Deep in a canyon system, she found crystal formations that looked like frozen purple lightning. Her scanner readings made her stop and double-check everything. "Jake, you need to see this," she said over the comm. The entire crew gathered at Lisa's location. The crystals grew from the canyon walls in clusters, each one perfectly formed. They glowed with internal light. "These crystals store energy," Lisa explained, her voice shaking with excitement. "But not like anything in Federation databases. They're 100 times more efficient than our best batteries. A single kilogram could power a starship for years." Jake whistled. "How much is here?" "Tons," Lisa said. "Maybe hundreds of tons. This canyon alone could revolutionize galactic power systems." The discovery brought new challenges. The crystals were located in the deepest, hottest part of the canyon. Temperatures there reached 200 degrees Celsius. The atmospheric pressure was crushing. Even with their improved suits, the crew could only work in 15-minute intervals before they had to retreat. Marcus tried building mining drones, but they failed within hours. The heat destroyed their electronics. The pressure crushed their frames. Automated systems could not handle Tartarus Prime's extremes. "We have to do it manually," Jake said during a team meeting. "We go in shifts. 15 minutes of work, then rotate out. We replace equipment as it fails. We haul the crystals out by hand." Zixton was horrified when the Solarian heard the plan. "That's barbaric. You're proposing to work in conditions that will damage your bodies." "Our bodies can heal," Nathan said calmly. "And we have medical protocols to minimize damage." "But why?" Zixton asked. "Why not develop better machines?" Jake answered. "Because machines take time to design and build. We're here now. We have the opportunity now. Federation species work smarter, not harder. Humans work both. That's why we're here and you're not." The mining operation began the next day. The crew descended into the canyon in pairs, carrying tools and empty containers. The heat was overwhelming, even through their suits. The pressure made breathing difficult, but they worked. They used hand tools to chip crystals from the rock. They loaded the fragments into containers. They hauled everything back up the canyon walls. 15 minutes of work, then rest while the next pair went down. Rotate, recover, repeat. It was slow. It was painful. It was dangerous. But it worked. Day after day, the pile of harvested crystals grew. As they worked, new problems emerged. The Ravagers had learned that the humans were here to stay. Multiple packs began converging on the base camp. These creatures were not mindless beasts. They were intelligent hunters, and they were coordinating their attacks. Kate recognized the pattern. She had seen it before, studying wolf packs in Earth's wilderness. The Ravagers were testing their defenses, looking for weaknesses, planning a major assault. They're going to hit us hard, Kate told Jake. Probably when we're most vulnerable. During the mining operation, can we stop them? Kate smiled grimly. We can make them regret trying. She implemented a defensive strategy borrowed from ancient human warfare. Create a kill zone, force the enemy into terrain that favors the defender, use the environment as a weapon. The crew rigged explosive charges in the canyon walls. They set up energy barriers at choke points. They established overlapping fields of fire. The attack came 3 days later. 6 Ravagers struck simultaneously, emerging from multiple directions. They were huge, fast, and angry. Their crystalline teeth tore through barriers. Their armored hides shrugged off weapons fire. But Kate's plan worked. The crew channeled the creatures into prepared positions. Marcus triggered controlled rock slides that crushed 1 Ravager and injured 2 others. Lisa used cold-emitting devices to freeze the ground, making the creatures slip and fall. Samantha operated a mounted plasma cannon, focusing fire on weak points Kate had identified. The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it ended, 2 Ravagers were dead and the others retreated, wounded and wary. The humans had won, but it was not easy. The base camp had sustained damage. Nathan treated multiple injuries from falling debris and glancing blows. Everyone was exhausted. Jake stood at the perimeter, watching the Ravagers disappear into the canyons. They'll be back, he said. But they learned a lesson, Kate replied. We're more trouble than we're worth. Word of the battle reached the Federation within hours. The fact that humans had fought multiple apex predators and survived shocked everyone. Military analysts studied the combat footage, noting the tactics and teamwork. The humans had not relied on superior firepower. They had used intelligence, planning, and environmental knowledge. 3 months into the mission, something remarkable happened. The crew stopped thinking of Tartarus Prime as their enemy. The shift was subtle but profound. They no longer complained about the heat or the pressure or the danger. These things were just facts of life here. During one evening meal, Lisa articulated what everyone was feeling. You know what I realized? Every threat here has an Earth equivalent. The heat is like Death Valley. The pressure is like deep ocean. The predators are like megafauna from our past. The storms are just really intense hurricanes. Marcus nodded. Tartarus Prime is extreme Earth. Same basic challenges, just turned up to maximum. Which means we already know how to survive here, Samantha added. We just have to apply lessons from home. Jake raised his coffee cup. To Earth, the original death world that taught us everything we need to know. They all drank to that. Sixton watched this exchange through the monitors and finally understood. The humans were not being brave or foolish. They were being practical. To most species, survival meant safety and comfort. To humans, survival meant adapting to whatever environment they found themselves in. The Solarian sent a report to the Federation that changed galactic policy. We have been measuring habitability incorrectly, Sixthon wrote. We ask if a planet is safe for life. We should be asking if life can adapt to the planet. Humans prove that adaptation is more valuable than initial safety. They do not need perfect conditions. They create survivable conditions through effort and ingenuity. The report sparked debates across the galaxy. Some species saw opportunity. If humans could survive Class 15 worlds, the Federation could access resources previously thought unreachable. Other species saw threat. If humans could thrive where others could not, what would stop them from claiming all the dangerous real estate in the galaxy? Ambassador Vorath addressed these concerns directly. Humans are not conquerors, the Krethak said. They are survivors. They do not seek to dominate the galaxy. They seek to explore it. Yes, they can live where we cannot, but that makes them valuable allies, not threatening enemies. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Having friends who can go where we fear to tread makes us all stronger. Month 4 on Tartarus Prime began with a warning. Lisa's seismic monitoring equipment had been recording data continuously since their arrival. She studied the patterns obsessively, understanding that this planet was geologically active in ways Earth had never been. The reading she saw on day 117 made her blood run cold. "Jake, we have a problem," she said, pulling up the data on the main screen. The entire crew gathered around. The display showed micro-tremors increasing in frequency and intensity. Geothermal vents were changing temperature. The magnetic field was fluctuating. "What are we looking at?" Jake asked. Lisa took a deep breath. "A major seismic event. Magnitude 9.5 or higher on the Earth scale, and it's centered directly beneath us." The crew fell silent. They had survived storms and predators in extreme conditions, but an earthquake of that magnitude could destroy everything in seconds. The canyon walls would collapse. The base camp would be buried. There would be nowhere to run. "When?" Marcus asked. 8 hours, Lisa said. "Maybe 10. "The pattern is accelerating." Zixthan's voice crackled over the comm from the frontier in orbit. "I am receiving the same data. Federation Command is ordering immediate evacuation. The ship is dropping to low orbit for retrieval." Jake looked at the crystal storage containers. They had been working on the largest extraction yet. Enough material to justify the entire mission. Months of dangerous work sat in those containers. If they evacuated now, they would have to leave it all behind. "How much time do we need to load everything?" he asked Marcus. Marcus did quick calculations. 6 hours, maybe 7 with the gravity and heat. "That's cutting it very close," Nathan said. Jake turned to face his crew. "I'm calling a vote. We can evacuate now and save ourselves, or we can risk it and try to complete the mission. Everyone gets a say." The Federation species watching from orbit were confused. Hierarchical species did not vote on survival decisions. The commander gave orders and subordinates obeyed. But humans operated differently. Lisa spoke first. "I vote we stay. We came here to do a job. Let's finish it." Marcus nodded. "Stay. We've survived everything else this planet threw at us." Kate checked her weapon out of habit. "Stay, we don't run from fights." Nathan smiled slightly. "Stay. I didn't come this far to quit now." Samantha cracked her knuckles. "Stay, I can fly us out of anything." Jake looked at them with pride. Unanimous. "Let's get to work." Zixthan's voice was filled with disbelief. "You are staying?" "The planet is about to tear itself apart." "Then we better work fast," Jake replied. The crew moved with desperate efficiency. Marcus rigged a hauling system using every piece of cable and rope they had. The crystal containers were heavy even in the base camp. Getting them to the landing craft would require coordinated effort. Lisa coordinated the operation, marking which containers were most valuable. They could not take everything, so they had to prioritize. She made tough choices, selecting the purest crystals and leaving behind lesser samples. Nathan stood ready with medical supplies. He knew injuries were coming. Working this fast in these conditions, someone would get hurt. He prepared stimulants to keep people moving and painkillers for when adrenaline was not enough. Kate maintained perimeter security, because even during an emergency, the planet's predators did not take breaks. She spotted 3 Ravagers watching from the canyon rim but did not waste ammunition. They were not attacking, just observing. Samantha prepped the landing craft, running every system check, making sure the ship was ready for immediate departure. She calculated flight paths, backup routes, emergency procedures. When the time came, she would have one chance to get everyone off this planet alive. The tremors began small. Equipment rattled. Dust fell from the canyon walls. But the crew kept working, hauling containers one by one. They moved like a machine, each person knowing their role, trusting their teammates absolutely. 2 hours passed. 4 containers loaded. The tremors grew stronger. 4 hours. 8 containers. The ground shook constantly now. Cracks appeared in the canyon walls. 6 hours. 12 containers. Everyone was exhausted. The gravity and heat sapped their strength. Nathan administered stimulants to keep them going. The ground was no longer steady. Walking required constant adjustment. "One more," Jake gasped, hauling the final container. "Just one more." They got it loaded with 30 minutes to spare. Jake gave the order to evacuate. The crew scrambled aboard the landing craft, securing equipment and strapping in. Samantha fired the engines. The earthquake hit just as they lifted off. The canyon exploded beneath them. Rock walls that had stood for millions of years crumbled in seconds. The base camp, their home for 4 months, collapsed like a house of cards. Volcanic vents erupted, spewing lava and toxic gas. Samantha fought the controls as the shockwave hit them. The landing craft spun, alarm screaming. Debris pelted the hull. A massive boulder clipped their starboard engine, and red warning lights flooded the cockpit. Engine 2 is gone, Samantha reported, her voice calm despite the chaos. Compensating with Engine 1 and thrusters, the craft lurched sideways. More debris struck them. The windscreen cracked. But Samantha's hands never stopped moving. She adjusted thrust, corrected angle, fought for every meter of altitude. Below them, Tartarus Prime transformed. The earthquake triggered a cascade of volcanic eruptions. Lava flowed through the canyons where they had lived and worked. The entire landing site became a hellscape of fire and destruction. "Come on," Samantha whispered to the ship. "Come on, you can make it." They broke through the atmosphere with the hull glowing red-hot and half their systems failing. The Frontier was there, holding position despite the dangerous proximity to the planet. Samantha lined up for docking with one engine and prayer. The landing craft slammed into the Frontier's docking bay harder than intended. Alarms shrieked. But they were aboard. They were safe. Samantha killed the remaining engine and slumped back in her seat. "Welcome home," she said. The crew sat in silence for a moment, breathing hard, processing what they had just survived. Then Jake started laughing. It was not hysterical laughter. It was the laughter of someone who had faced death and won. The others joined in. They laughed until tears ran down their faces. They had done it. They had completed the impossible mission. They had extracted resources from a Class 15 Deathworld and lived to tell about it. Zixton entered the docking bay, all 6 eyes wide with amazement. "You escaped with seconds to spare. The seismic event destroyed everything. The landing site no longer exists." Jake looked at the Solarian and smiled. "But we got the crystals. Mission accomplished." In the Grand Chamber of the Federation, ambassadors watched the footage in stunned silence. They had witnessed something unprecedented. The humans had not just survived Tartarus Prime. They had thrived there for 4 months. They had faced the planet's worst and extracted massive quantities of resources. And when the planet itself tried to kill them, they had escaped through skill and determination. Ambassador Vorath stood and addressed the assembly. "The humans have proven something we thought impossible. They have shown that a Class 15 Deathworld can be exploited. This changes everything. We must reconsider our entire approach to planetary classification and resource extraction." But as the Federation debated policy, Lisa made one more discovery. She was reviewing sensor data from their final moments on the surface when she noticed something impossible. Life signs were still present in the devastated landing zone. "The Ravagers," she said, showing the data to the crew. "They survived. More than that, they're active in the volcanic zone." Jake studied the readings. "They're feeding. Look at the patterns. They're hunting organisms that live in the lava flows." The implications were staggering. Tartarus Prime was not a static death world. It was cyclical. The seismic events that made it deadly also drove its ecosystem's evolution. The creatures there were not just surviving extreme conditions. They were adapted specifically for catastrophic change. "The planet is a forge," Lisa said quietly. "It keeps hitting the reset button on life. Most species go extinct, but some adapt. The survivors become stronger, tougher, more resilient." Jake understood immediately. Like Earth, ice ages, meteor strikes, volcanic winters. Our planet kept testing life. Humans are the descendants of the species that passed those tests. Which is why we recognize Tartarus Prime for what it is. Marcus added, "Not a death world. A training ground." Zixton listened to this conversation with a growing sense of understanding. The Silarian had spent months trying to comprehend why humans were different. Now it made sense. Most species evolved on stable worlds where survival meant avoiding danger. Humans evolved on a forge world where survival meant adapting to danger. That difference was everything. As the Frontier began its journey back to Federation space, the crew took one last look at Tartarus Prime. The planet spun below them, beautiful and terrible, wreathed in volcanic smoke and storm clouds. It had tried to kill them in every way possible. But they had survived. "Will we ever come back?" Samantha asked. Jake smiled. "Definitely. There's more to learn here, more resources to extract, and now we know it can be done." Kate laughed. "Next time we bring better equipment." "Next time," Nathan agreed. "We'll be ready." The Frontier accelerated away from Tartarus Prime, carrying its precious cargo of energy crystals and even more precious cargo of human. The Frontier's return to Unity Station was unlike anything the Federation had seen before. Ships from hundreds of worlds formed an honor guard as the human vessel approached. The docking bay was filled with representatives from every major species. They were not there to mourn a failed mission. They were there to celebrate an impossible success. Jake and his crew stepped off the ship to thunderous applause. It felt strange after months of isolation on a hostile world. The crew exchanged glances, uncomfortable with the attention. They had just been doing their job. But to the galaxy, they had done much more. They had proven that the impossible was possible. They had extracted resources from a Class 15 Deathworld. They had survived conditions that would kill most species in minutes. They had changed everything. The energy crystals they brought back were distributed to Federation scientists for study. The results were even better than Lisa's initial assessment. A single crystal could power a starship for 5 years, a space station for 10. The technology would revolutionize galactic civilization. But the impact of the mission went far beyond resources. The galaxy's perception of humanity shifted dramatically. Species that viewed humans as interesting but unremarkable now saw them as uniquely capable. The Federation's military command requested human advisors for survival training. Scientific institutions wanted to study human adaptation mechanisms. Diplomatic channels that were previously neutral suddenly became warm and welcoming. At the formal award ceremony, Jake stood before the assembled Federation. He wore a crisp uniform with new medals that felt too heavy. Beside him stood his crew, equally uncomfortable with ceremony but proud of their achievement. Ambassador Vorath presented the awards personally. Commander Morrison and crew, the key are, Dak said, you have accomplished what we believed impossible. You have shown us that our understanding of habitability was incomplete. You have opened doors to resources we thought forever locked. On behalf of the Galactic Federation, we thank you. Jake accepted the award, then stepped to the podium to speak. He had prepared a speech, but looking out at the thousands of assembled beings, he decided to say what was really in his heart. We didn't do anything special, Jake said. We just applied lessons we learned from our home planet. Earth taught us that survival is not about avoiding hardship. It's about facing it head-on and refusing to quit. Every human carries that legacy. We're not special because we survived Tartarus Prime. We survived Tartarus Prime because surviving impossible odds is what humanity does. He paused, looking at his crew. But I want to make something clear. We succeeded because we worked together. Lisa's knowledge, Marcus' engineering, Kate, tactics, Nathan, medicine, Samantha's flying. Alone, any of us would have failed. Together, we were unstoppable. That is the real lesson. Cooperation beats impossibility every time. The applause that followed was genuine. The Federation understood the value of cooperation. They had built an entire civilization on that principle, but they had never seen cooperation pushed to such extremes. In the weeks that followed, the Federation underwent significant changes. The Council created a new classification system for planets, adding a human habitability index that measured not just immediate safety, but adaptation potential. Worlds previously marked as uninhabitable were reassessed. Scientists identified dozens of planets that humans might be able to colonize or exploit for resources. This revelation brought both excitement and concern. Some species saw opportunity. The galaxy's resource pool had just expanded dramatically, but others worried about human expansion. If humans could thrive on Class 15 worlds, what would stop them from claiming all the dangerous territory in the galaxy? Ambassador Vorath addressed these concerns in a landmark speech before the full Federation assembly. I understand the fear. The key are, Dak said. Humans can survive where we cannot. That gives them access to resources and territory we cannot claim. But I have spent months observing these beings. They are not conquerors, they are explorers. They do not seek to dominate the galaxy. They seek to understand it, Vorath continued. More importantly, they have shown a willingness to cooperate. They shared their survival techniques with us. They documented their methods soothers can learn. They want to help the Federation expand, not replace it. Having galleys who can go where we fear to tread does not weaken us. It makes us stronger. The speech shifted opinion. The Federation Council voted to establish the Joint Exploration Initiative, a program where human crews would partner with alien specialists to survey and develop extreme environment worlds. It was a compromise that satisfied everyone. Humans would provide physical resilience and survival expertise. Other species would contribute their unique technologies and perspectives. The crew of the Frontier moved on to new challenges. Lisa Chen became director of the Extreme Environment Research Institute, training the next generation of xenobiologists. She taught them to see hostile environments not as enemies but as puzzles to solve. Her students came from dozens of species, all learning from human experience. Marcus Webb led the engineering team designing equipment for Class 10 and higher planets. His designs combined Federation technology with human pragmatism. Where alien engineers built perfect systems that failed under stress, Marcus built imperfect systems that adapted and endured. Kate Sullivan joined the Federation's Tactical Response Unit, teaching survival doctrine to mixed species teams. Her courses were brutal but effective. Students learned that the best weapon against a hostile environment was not firepower but understanding. She showed them how to turn any environment into an ally. Nathan Cross opened a clinic specializing in extreme environment medicine. He treated injuries and conditions that most Federation doctors had never encountered. More importantly, he researched how different species could adapt to hostile conditions. His work saved countless lives. Samantha Rivers took command of her own exploration vessel. She led missions to planets that made Tartarus Prime look easy. Her reputation as a pilot who could fly through anything became legendary across the galaxy. Jake Morrison was promoted to Admiral and Overseer of Humanity. As integration into the Federation's Exploration Corps, but he never forgot Tartarus Prime. The planet had taught him a fundamental truth about humanity, as place in the galaxy. 5 years after the first mission, humanity returned to Tartarus Prime. This time they came prepared. A permanent research station was established in orbit, equipped with everything learned from the first expedition. Rotating crews made surface trips to continue crystal mining and biological research. The planet that once threatened to kill them now sustained a thriving human presence. The colonists developed a strange affection for Tartarus Prime. They gave the Ravagers names, studied their behavior, even developed a form of peaceful coexistence. The storms became weather patterns to plan around. The heat became another engineering challenge. Zix then visited the surface station during its first year of operation. The Solarian had become the Federation's leading expert on human capability, writing papers and giving lectures across the galaxy. But seeing Tartarus Prime again brought back memories. Zix then stood in an observation dome, watching a hypercane rage across the horizon. Human technicians worked calmly in the distance, performing maintenance on equipment. They moved with practiced efficiency, unbothered by conditions that would terrify most species. "Do you understand now?" Jake asked. He had come down to visit the station and found Zix, then watching. "Yes," Zix then said. "To most species, survival means safety and comfort. To humans, survival means adaptation and persistence. You do not need perfect conditions. You create survivable conditions through effort and ingenuity." Jake smiled. Earth was our teacher. It threw everything at us and we learned to handle it. Tartarus Prime is just Earth turned up to maximum. Difficult, yes, impossible, no. They watched the storm together in comfortable silence. Finally, Zix's then asked the question that had been bothering the Solarian for years. "What is it like? To come from a world that constantly tests you?" Jake thought about it. "It's normal for us. We don't to know anything else, but I think it gave us a gift. We learned that nothing is truly impossible. Everything can be overcome with enough determination and creativity. That's humanity, as a strength. No toward technology or our weapons. Our stubborn refusal to accept defeat." A transmission came through from the colony director. They were reporting the day's progress to Unity Station. Jake listened with pride as the human voice echoed through the dome. "This is Tartarus Prime Colony calling Unity Station. Surface conditions are stable. Current temperature 145 degrees Celsius. Wind speed 320 kilometers per hour. 2 Ravager packs in the vicinity. Crystal mining operations proceeding on schedule. All personnel accounted for and in good health. We readapting well. Tartarus Prime sends its regards. Humanity thrives." The message was broadcast across the Federation. Zix then knew it would be analyzed and discussed on thousands of worlds. The simple words carried a profound message. Tartarus Prime, the planet that should have been uninhabitable, was now home to humans who considered it just another workplace.